I think anyone in business needs to be a leader, and there's opportunities to, step up and be a leader.
How would you say you actually teach leadership?
Well, I'll give you one example. All of the good leaders, they have a set of core beliefs and values that guide their behavior.
What is a thing that you are currently working on improving in your life?
You said a word that really hit home for me: the uncluttered view of a 9-year-old is interesting and refreshing.
Life changing opportunities come twice a year.
Twice a year, huh?
And hello there. My name is Alex Elish. This is Big Performance Podcast, where we are talking to entrepreneurs and thought leaders about performance and how we do it better. And each of my guests have something to teach me, and I did not fail to learn so far. Today, my guest is Paul Thornton. Paul, thank you for coming.
My pleasure.
Please tell us about yourself, because an introduction from me, I think, would be pale
Mhm.
against an introduction from a professional speaker and educator like yourself.
Okay, sure. I live in Situate, Massachusetts. It's about 20 miles south of Boston. I have been married for 50 years, two children. I have five grandsons that keep me very active. I worked 20 years in corporate America, and I worked as a college teacher for 20 years as well. So I like to do things for 20 years, although I've been married for 50. Leadership is my passion, I guess I'd say. I've been a student and teacher of leadership concepts for the past, I don't know, 30, 40 years. So that's kind of my background. I've written a lot of books about it and done seminars and workshops and speeches and what have you.
So in college, you were teaching directly leadership, or what kind of other disciplines that are connected to those? Because 20 years of education is a lot to cover. Were you this like super niched into leadership?
I was teaching a variety of courses, one of them being principles of leadership, but I was also teaching organizational behavior. What else? Principles of management, human resource management. So a host of courses, but leadership was the one theme that I liked the best. And I kind of weave that through a lot of the courses I taught, because I think anyone in business needs to be a leader, and there's opportunities to, step up and be a leader.
Tell me a little bit about your career, how it all started.
Yeah.
How did you flow into a corporate job? What were you doing?
Yeah.
And what pushed you to educate people and share the knowledge around?
Mm. Good question, Alex. I played high school hockey, and we had a pretty good team, but our team was always kind of in the middle of the pack. We were never champions of the league. We were always kind of in fourth or fifth place. And it got me wondering, why is it that there were one or two teams that were always winning the league? They were one or two. And I kept thinking, why isn't our team winning? And it got me wondering, what are the coaches doing of the top teams different than my coach? And that kind of sparked my interest in what do the great coaches do? What do the great leaders do? What do the great teachers do? So that was my initial interest in what separates the top coach from the average coach. I then went to college, and I had a great course with this professor who had developed a leadership model called the situational leadership model. And he had sparked my interest greatly in studying more about leadership, learning as much as I could, um, finding out, what makes a great leader, what do they do differently. So that kind of got me going along this path. After college, I I started out actually. I was an assistant hockey coach and teacher at a uh, 4-year college, and I did that for a few years, but I wasn't making much money, so I went into corporate America to make some bucks, and I did that for 20 years. And I worked in human resources dealing with people. And one of the things that they got me involved with was conducting training programs. And at the time, there was a big emphasis on helping the managers at this companies be more effective leaders. So again, that kind of further influenced me and motivated me to learn as much as I could about leadership and what the leaders do. And after doing that for 20 years, I just felt like I needed a change. And I had an opportunity to go into a college and be a professor. And so I did that and enjoyed that tremendously. And along the way, I had my own company for a few years and did seminars and workshops on leadership and what have you. And as I said earlier, I wrote a lot of books on it and have conducted seminars and workshops. So that's kind of my story, I guess.
Mhm. Recently, I heard this idea that I really loved. It said that life changing opportunities come twice a year.
Twice a year, huh?
And yeah, and it really pushed my internal clock
Yeah.
for better patience. And from your why your story reminded me that is that you are coming back and back to this motive of leadership, and it never left you,
Mm-hmm.
but there were some space gaps between
Mm-hmm.
those career and life changing things.
Yeah.
All right, so you were aspired uh, to find out what makes great organizations great and successful, and you
Mm-hmm.
discovered leadership
Mm-hmm.
that prompted you to this curiosity journey through corporate America in a HR position, then to a your own business and to education. What did you find in the education realm that you really liked, apart from prestige, I guess, because you were a teacher. It has this like out of the gate prestige because he shares knowledge, and people need to hear what you have to share.
Mm-hmm. I think as a teacher, I think it's very gratifying to be able to explain or educate or expose students to concepts and ideas that get them excited, especially those ideas that I felt would help them step up and be a leader, help them add value. I tried to teach very practical ideas and concepts. I was teaching at a community college, which is a 2-year college, and I found the students there basically they wanted like 5 minutes of theory and 50 minutes of application. How do I apply this? There's all sorts of theories and models and concepts out there, but how do you apply it? What do I do on the job? How do I add value? How do I make a difference? So I spent a lot of time on the application side of the principle or concept that I was teaching. But teaching is very fulfilling, very rewarding. It's exciting, challenging, all those words. Um, and it keeps the teacher on or motivated to stay current. And I was always trying to come up with a new and better way of teaching the concept that I was teaching. And I would bring in a lot of guest speakers and I would use different techniques. Um, for example, I used music in my courses to teach various principles of leadership. I used movies. I brought in guest speakers like a comedian. How does a comedian, what they do, how does it relate to leadership and what are the connections there? So I weaved in a lot of different approaches to teaching leadership.
I see. So for you, it was first the perks of being a mentor.
Yep.
So you find this joy in seeing the people who you share stuff with, who you invest in,
Hmm.
seeing them grow. That's a
Exactly.
pleasant side of mentorship situation, and you saw this as motivating for your own growth
Hmm.
and like developing the craft
Hmm.
that you are getting to people, because in that situation where you want to see people grow around you, you need to grow yourself. And I think that this would be one of the principles of leadership.
Hmm. I would agree.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Very much so.
all right, take me through your first book.
Well, I think, I've studied a lot of leaders, and I think a couple things they have in common. All of the good leaders, they have number one, they have a set of core beliefs and values that guide their behavior. And as simple as that sounds, it takes time and effort and reflection to figure out what do I really believe and value? What are my core beliefs and values? And those get tested, they get fine tuned, they get revised. But knowing what those are, what you stand for, where you draw the line, so to speak, I think is one thing you find with all the great leaders. Number two, I think all leaders want to improve the status quo. They want to make things better. They want to add value. And number three, they typically use a style or approach that's going to help people, and they typically follow a process to improve the situation. And those are some of the things I've concentrated on over the years. And like I said earlier, teaching students and people in seminars and workshops, that type of thing.
Where you really got my heart going is when you shared about your method of giving 10 minutes of theory and 50 minutes of
Yep.
actual training
Hmm.
for the application.
Hmm.
This is something that I would have loved. I could
Mm.
not stand theory until I saw the actual how I use it and where, in what kind of situation I can apply this.
Hmm. Yep.
It was the only thing that kept me attentive on the
Hmm.
lectures,
Hmm.
really.
Yep.
So how how would you say you actually teach leadership practically to the
Yeah.
crowd of people?
Yeah. Um, well, I'll give you one example. I was teaching how to conduct an effective meeting. And a teacher could go through a lot of slides and a lot of information, as a leader, do this, do that. And I would cover a little bit of that, but then I would actually divide the class into two groups, and each group would have to run a meeting, and someone would have to be selected to be the team leader, and other roles were defined, but they would have 20 minutes that the team leader had to run the meeting. So again, it was giving them hands-on, actual experience at running a meeting. And then we'd critique it afterwards and give feedback and what worked and what didn't, and things like that. I also would use a lot of role play situations, and I'd put someone, I'd say, okay, you're the leader. You have an employee that's performing below expectations. You're meeting with this employee. What would you say? How would you conduct the meeting? So things like that. In terms of the first point I was mentioning, that leaders need to get clear on what they value and believe, I would have the students do various exercises in looking at a list of values, and they'd have to identify the top 5 or so that they felt were strong for them. And then they'd have to discuss in a small group, what do they do day to day to demonstrate or support those values? How do they live those values, let's say? So that's kind of the approach I used. And in the debrief, we'd talk about, how does that connect to being a leader? How does that connect to adding value? How does that connect to your values and your core beliefs? Things like that.
I think it's a sign of a professional, and there are no questions about it, because when you speak about the practical application of leadership skills and how you teach them, you manage to address both realms. As you mentioned before, you said that there are aspects that are internal and there are aspects that are external.
Mm-hmm.
So you have given your students the knowledge and a way to practice internal things like values and introspection into what works, what motivates them.
Mm-hmm.
And then you said, all right, we're breaking you into groups, and here is your goal. Here
Mm-hmm.
is the criteria of success. Go practice. This is
Mm-hmm.
awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I really like it.
Mm. Yeah, I think leadership starts as an inside job. You need to reflect and get clear on yourself, what's important, what's your mission, what do you believe, what do you value. And then once you get some clarity around that, then you can be more of a positive influence when you're interacting with one individual or a team or a big group, that type of thing. But getting clear yourself is number one, or it starts there.
I have this beef with education because of this archaic style of lecturing people and then
Yeah.
giving them the knowledge without transferring any skills to them. So after the education program, we have people who know a lot of stuff and can do nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was made to believe that, oh, the actual profession is super different. So when you're coming to a job, they teach you from the ground up based on the skills that you acquired in the university.
Yeah.
And you never did.
Yeah.
And knowledge that you got there is useless.
Mm-hmm.
Zero skills, useless knowledge. And you teach, you learn to grow into your position
Mm-hmm.
on the job site. I
Mm.
thought it's crazy.
Mm.
And you already went into a better methodology with this application of the things that you really want to equip your
Yeah.
students with.
Yep. And part of it probably was also related to the fact that when I first started college teaching, I was also the assistant hockey coach. And teaching hockey players how to perform as a group and execute offense and defense and what have you, there's a lot of, obviously hands on practice that you're doing on the ice. So you're going through drills and stuff, but they're doing a lot of the day to day implementation of the offense and defense that you're trying to teach them. But like I say, the application part was 90% or so, and the theory was, 10%. So a little theory went a long way, but getting the hockey players to perform and execute the strategy you were trying to teach them was very important. So that kind of made me think, okay, in the classroom, I need to do the same thing. I need to give a little bit of theory, but also explain how do you apply this in real life and what are the problems and issues that occur, um, when you're dealing with it. I read about a professor at a medical school who, first day of class, he went over some medical procedure and he said, that's really all you need to know. But he said, for the rest of the semester, I'm going to teach you all the things that can go wrong and what you need to do as a doctor to, correct it and be mindful of it and avoid it, et cetera, et cetera. So again, that was a kind of a unique way to think about the simplicity of what you're telling them. This is how you run a meeting, do this, this, and this, no big deal, it's easy. Well, it's not. There's a lot to it, and there's a lot of issues that can occur, and other people may try to dominate the meeting, and people have hidden agendas, and all those things that happen. So that's kind of, so what I'm saying is my hockey experience probably helped me think a little bit about, okay, how am I going to have the students apply these things and make it stick for them?
I think you represent one of the most efficient ways to teach a person to educate on leadership, because I can see a lot of parallels between an actual team sport
Mm-hmm.
and, for example, business.
Mm-hmm.
And we think about leadership in business, we don't think simultaneously about leadership in sport. But the things that people learn on playing fields in team sports
Mm-hmm.
apply to business quite easily. And you are saying that the first things are internal, and one of the internal things that we really think about in business most of the time is the strategy, and the strategy in sport, and how the team leader translates that strategy to each of the players. How does that happen, and how can we take an outcome to the business realm?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, strategy, as you say, in sports or business is really critical. In teaching the hockey players, they had to be clear on not only what the strategy was, but what their role and responsibilities were to implement that strategy and what they had to do to add value. So if they saw a clear connection of what they were doing on the ice and their role and what have you, it certainly made the strategy come alive and supported it. And I think the same thing is true in business. Employees need to understand how is their job, how is their role supporting the strategy, and why is that important, and how are they, like I said, adding value to implementing the strategy.
What do you think are the things that you got for yourself from your HR position that helped you in leadership? What did you know about people from managing the HR processes
Hmm.
in the organization that you could get with you?
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, I think in human resources, you learn that you deal with a lot of different types of people, and you learn there's a whole range of issues and challenges they're going through in their world. And you also kind of get a sense that, or you learn different things motivate different people, and different people have different stress levels, and they react differently to a challenge or an opportunity that you're putting in front of them. So I think all of that is important for a leader to be mindful of, that each person on my team is unique, and they have unique situations and goals and strengths and weaknesses and things like that. So how I help one person may be different than how I help another person. Some people may not need any help; they just need to be empowered and say, "Go do it." Other people need coaching and mentoring, and so it teaches you that people are unique. People are they each have their own strengths and weaknesses, and you need to uh, spend time getting to know them and getting to understand them, so you can, effectively interact and engage them and bring out the best in them.
What you're saying really resonates with me in a painful way, because I can see how in my character there is, I am very far from that on default. So I need a lot of effort to keep these things in mind, because it is part of my character that I have this crazy assumption that all the people around me are exactly like me. And if I know something, even if I learned it yesterday, I am the last person on the planet to learn it. So it is part of me to think that all the knowledge I have is available to all the people that I collaborate with. And
Hmm.
this includes my team.
Hmm.
And I am shocked every time when they say, "Oh, Alex, we don't know these things.
Mm. Mm.
The things that you are asking us to do, we
Hmm.
heard about them, but we don't actually understand it."
Yeah.
And I am so thankful when they do tell me.
Yeah.
And problems arise when they don't,
Yeah. Yeah.
when we are misaligned without being uh,
Mm.
understanding about it.
Hmm.
Can you share a few hints that I can train myself to keep in mind in that regard?
Well, there's this idea of they call it the curse of knowledge, that the more knowledge a leader has, the more they assume other people are up to date and have similar understanding, and a concept that you're totally familiar with and totally understand may be totally foreign to someone on your team, as you're describing. But I think, like any leader, the good news, Alex, is that the more self aware we are, the more we can reflect on what we're doing, what we're assuming, and what changes we need to make. So, spending time in reflection, having a mentor that you can talk to and bounce ideas off. But I think a huge part of being a good leader is the need to reflect and spend time thinking about your decisions, your actions you're taking, what's working, what isn't working. that's a big part of how we grow. I mean, we all have blind spots that we're not aware of something we do, or we don't fully, you know, appreciate the wrong assumptions we're making or things like that. So a lot of, not a lot, but some amount of reflection and being open to feedback from others is critical for any leader.
Feedback is good. I could use that. Do you know effective ways how to ask for feedback in a leadership situation?
Yeah. Well, I think you got to frame it that, in this situation or this problem we were discussing, I made this decision, or I was making these assumptions, or in this particular interaction, I was doing XYZ. So I think you got to frame it in a way and then ask for the feedback. What should I have done differently, or what could I have done differently? What would have helped me see the bigger picture, or would have helped me see how each person on the team thought about that, that type of thing. So I think just saying to the group, give me some feedback on my leadership is too broad, right? If you narrow it down to some specific things on this decision, or what I did here, or how I acted here, can you give me some feedback on that? That is more helpful.
Thank you. In your books that you published, what are the new things that you bring up to the scientific discourse? What fresh perspective you give in those books that is uniquely your own?
That relates to my own experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, one book I wrote that I think is a good book for any leader is the Leadership Styles. And I boil it down to three basic styles: directing, discussing, and delegating. All three are used all the time, I think, by teachers, parents, coaches, managers. Directing, you tell the person what to do, how to do it, when to have it done by. You, the leader, do most of the talking. The only feedback you want is, does the person understand what they need to do? If a person's never done something, they're complete novice, they have no idea what to do. They need direction. They want direction. They want a roadmap. So you, the leader, telling them what to do is going to help them. The second style is discussing. Discussing, you're asking questions like you're doing today. You're involving people in getting their thoughts and ideas on the problem, the goal, the opportunity, whatever it might be. Uh, but when you use a discussing style, you're forcing the person to think, right? They have to come up with answers to your questions. You're also getting them to present their ideas clearly and succinctly, and also to provide evidence, I guess, for their position. Um, Using a discussing style, people are also learning to collaborate, build on the ideas of other people if you're in a team setting, and things like that. If a person or team has some experience in the topic that you're dealing with, a discussion is probably good. Discussion helps us clarify our own thinking about the goal and plan and how we're going to proceed. So that would be that approach, discussing. The third one is delegating. Delegating, you empower the person to take action, to make it happen, get it done. If a person's got a lot of experience, they don't need to be told what to do. They don't need to have a discussion about what they're thinking. They know what to do. So just delegating, get this done by this date. Sometimes with delegation, we will tell the person what they got to get done, but how they're going to do it, when they're going to do it, all that's left up to them. So each style is appropriate and useful in certain situations. So I teach leaders to diagnose the situation and figure out what style is going to be most helpful and most appropriate for the person and the task that they're assigned. And a lot of times, we use the wrong style. Sometimes a person's got a lot of experience and we're telling them what to do and how to do it and do it this way. And they're getting very frustrated because they feel like they're being micromanaged when they know what to do. Just empower them and let them go do it. Um, Other times with discussion, I find some leaders overuse discussion. They want to collaborate on everything. So they have many meetings, many discussions, and the discussions go on and on and on. At some point, you got to make decisions. Discussion is good, but too much is bad. So at some point, the leader's got to say, okay, we've heard from everybody. We got to make a decision. What are we going to do? And sometimes it might be consensus, or sometimes it might be the leader saying, okay, I've heard everyone's views. I appreciate that. A lot of good ideas. I'm going to think about it for a day and I'm going to make a decision tomorrow on what we're going to do. Or I'm going to make a decision right now in the meeting. We're going to do this. So each one has, some issues around it that can cause some problems for the people involved. So you got to be mindful of that. So that's one major, it's very simple: directing, discussing, delegating, 3Ds, very simple. But as we said earlier, applying it and making it work successfully, consistently, can be challenging. So that's one of my big ideas that I teach. The other one is I teach that leadership is a process. It is basically 4 steps involved. The first step is diagnose the situation. Find out what's currently going on. And I recommend leaders look at what's being produced, what's the output, what's being accomplished, what's the quantity and quality of what's being accomplished. And then secondly, look at the process or strategy that's being used. And thirdly, look at the people. People's strengths, weaknesses, what are they thinking, feeling. But you got to get a kind of a sense of where is the person or team at now? What are they, where are they? So that's step number 1. Step number 2 is identifying opportunities to improve. What can we do to improve? I mean, there's usually some immediate things you can do. And then there may be some longer term things. But the leader typically does things like brainstorming and benchmarking, studying what other companies are doing, and checking in with other people. What are they thinking about what would improve the team or the organization, and getting their thoughts and ideas. And then they got to evaluate the ideas and decide what are the 1 or 2 things they want to pursue to make their function or team or department better. And then step 3 is presenting those ideas. Typically, you got to present your idea, your big idea, to your team or to the person that's going to fund your initiative in some cases. And there you get involved with, you got to explain your idea, you got to sell your idea, and you got to deliver your idea. And each of those things are very important. And then the 4th step is implementation. You got to have a plan and you got to implement that plan. And like I said, with the 3 styles of leading, each of these steps, on the one hand, they sound pretty easy, but there's problems and issues that can occur and things happen that, make it not go as you had hoped. So that's kind of the second big idea that I teach in my classes and in my books and what have you.
I think I would be an ideal student because of how low my skill is. So everything you say like lands, all right?
Mhm.
So I would have started just from this idea that leadership is a process. It's groundbreaking for me when we were made to believe that leadership is something that happens during the meetings
Mm-hmm.
where we discuss, talk, make decision,
Mm-hmm.
and thinking about it as a process makes me happy, makes
Mm-hmm.
me uh, feel that I moved step further in my understanding of the
Mm-hmm.
subject.
Mm-hmm.
So improving already. Thank you, Paul.
That's good. That's good.
With the first step of the process, I really the diagnose step. I really loved the idea of listening harder. It had the same effect on me, where just seemingly simple idea, but it lets me think about stuff from a different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So thinking harder, where when I discovered this idea, I felt stupid because even though the idea was shared with me in a book, I
Mm-hmm.
don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
They say listen harder,
Mm-hmm.
uh, try to find more signals from the market, signals from your team, signals from your customers.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt stupid because like how hard I can think. I have no idea of what it is listening harder,
Yeah.
but the challenging idea helped me discover something for myself,
Mm-hmm.
not through knowledge, but
Mm-hmm.
how the concise idea helps you put stuff around it.
Mm-hmm.
So the concepts that you are teaching are simple, but it gives us the structure to build stuff around it
Mm-hmm.
for our development.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Yeah, diagnosis is it's like a doctor diagnosing a patient, right? I mean, you got to start there. What's going on with the patient? And you got to look at the data and got to find out what the person's thinking and feeling and what's their situation before you can prescribe any sort of remedy or medication. What's going on with them? Where are they at? That takes a lot of steps to figure that out. So, same idea with the team or department or organization. Diagnosis is a step I think sometimes leaders skip or don't get fully clear on. And I think the other part of diagnosis is getting input from a variety of people. What do customers think about what you're producing, and what do your colleagues think, and what do other employees think? So getting a variety of inputs into what you're producing and how you're producing it, things like that, is helpful. So I think in my model, each step involves getting input from other people, soliciting their ideas and um, thoughts and what have you can help you clarify and come up with the right action that you're going to take.
Hmm, I see. I can share the story of how listening harder prompted me to action. And it was a challenge because they say, okay, listen to all the people, listen to different roles, listen to the market, whatever it meant to be saying to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, if they say listen harder and like evolve your ability to get this information, to get this feedback from different sources, I
Yeah.
thought, okay, maybe to listen harder, I need to stop listening to words because my team, my clients say me something, and I think that I'm so effective in listening just by understanding their words.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And at the time, I was torn by business growth and choosing the strategy that would work for me and for my team.
Mm-hmm.
And what I thought about was limiting myself and not thinking about any words anyone ever says to me. My team, my clients, I'm like, I'm not listening to any words from any of you guys,
Mm-hmm.
because it makes me too confident. It makes me too sure that I am correct with
Mm-hmm.
my outcomes, with my strategy. Yeah. And I thought about looking at the data with the clients that we had.
Yeah.
The data point that jumped into my vision is how long the clients stay with us. All the clients say, "Oh, you work slow." I think like, all right, we need to speed up the projects. And I come to the team, they say, "Oh yeah, we will speed up for sure." Cool. But what the data says, that every project stays longer with us, and the longer they stay with us, the happier they become. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, this
Yeah.
is something. I
Yeah.
thought that people come for to our team for products that we produce.
Mm-hmm.
No,
Mm-hmm.
they come because they like us,
Mm-hmm.
and they like working with us long term. They like having us as a competent team to support their business activities
Mm-hmm.
right there and
Yeah.
now. Everything they said, there was nothing about it,
Yeah.
but the data shows different.
Well, do they like you as a team as they get to know you more and appreciate the insights and value, the ideas that you present to them? Is that really what's helping them be more happy? Or is it
Yeah,
just the
I,
longer
I think,
you're assuming the longer they work with you, the happier they are? I'm wondering is are they happy the more they get to know you? So that if they got to know you and your team very quickly, would they be happy? Or does it take time to build that relationship and build that trust and build that the value you're adding to them? It takes time to make that happen, and that produces happiness at the end of the road, so to speak.
I think trust is a very big part of it, and it takes time to
Yeah.
for us to have this relationship to the point where we trust each other,
Mm-hmm.
like really.
Mm-hmm.
And that translates into the level of support that we can give
Yeah.
to the businesses, because we are a B2B company.
Yeah.
uh, for your context, people were coming to us to get a website.
Mm-hmm.
And this data showed me that we are better off helping companies on a monthly basis.
Mm-hmm.
So we are saying, yes, we can support, we can have ongoing calls where
Mm-hmm.
you get this confidence of
Yeah.
staying with us, and us having the ability to solve your stuff. It was more valuable than just a website that I initially was selling. I was
Yeah.
like, ooh, very cool website. No,
Yeah.
people are after the team who hears them
Yeah.
and helps.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you have I'm jumping to a new topic. Do you have a roster of successful leaders that went through your education and went out there to do crazy cool stuff, build huge organizations, and succeed in every parameter? Because I know coaches would have it, saying,
Yeah.
"Oh, I did this person, and now they play in NBA or whatever."
Yeah. Yeah. Um, no, I don't. I don't have any big name CEOs that I coached or mentored. I was, or my primary focus has been on probably middle managers and maybe director level at companies. Um, so, yeah, no, I do not have any big success stories that I taught, Elon Musk how to do XYZ, and he appreciated that, and he went on and did all these great things. So, no, I do not.
Do you keep in
I
touch
wish I
with
did.
some of the people?
I wish I did, but no, I do not.
Right. Do you keep in touch with some of the people that you
Oh
had?
yeah, yeah, I do. I do. Some have gone on to become vice presidents and things like that, but they're not household names that people would know. But I I don't really look at it quite that way. I look at it: am I helping a first line supervisor or middle manager or director or vice president be more effective as a leader? Uh, do my ideas and concepts help them, um, you know, add more value, make a bigger impact, develop their people more effectively, things like that? So I like to think that my books and seminars are helping people be more effective leaders. That's kind of my mission in life and my goal.
Do you get Christmas postcards from some of them?
I do, yeah. I get some feedback and tell me, when they get promoted and how things are going. And some people I talk to on a fairly regular basis, a few, um, but many no, many just attend the seminar workshop. They give me feedback at the end of it, um, and hopefully they walk away with some new idea or insight that they will put to use, and it will help them be a better leader.
How is your Well, the podcast is Big Performance Podcast. We talk about performance in the business realm and in the personal life performance. What is a thing that you are currently working on improving in your life?
Good question. Um, well, I'm currently working on, I don't know if an improvement for me, but I'm working on a book on leadership. And I have, interestingly, I have been interviewing my five grandsons. Their ages are 9 to 17. And I will, discuss a concept with them, but then I'll get their thoughts and ideas and what they think about it. Now, you may say that's kind of crazy. What does a 9-year-old know about leadership, or a 12-year-old? But it's interesting for me to see the impressions they have of, like, the coaches they've had, the teachers, the parents for that matter. Um, so it's giving me some interesting insights, I guess, for a complete, fresh view of what a good coach does or what a good coach doesn't do. So that's been kind of interesting. That's what I'm working on now. Um,
That's very interesting.
yeah.
I am confused where when people say that, oh, you were a very different person at 17 and 27. I'm 32. I'm not different there than a 15-year-old version of me. I know
Hmm.
more, I have more skills, I have more expertise under my belt, but I'm the same. Would
Mm.
I be the same kind of person with even less cluttered consciousness
Mm,
at age 9.
mm,
So
mm.
maybe I
That
did not
that's
change from age 9 really, and
yeah,
your kids provide you with this pure understanding
yeah,
actually of the same processes that they will go out to their
yeah,
life to experience.
yeah. You said a word that really hit home for me: the uncluttered view of a 9-year-old is interesting and refreshing. Their simplicity and their clarity of what works and what doesn't work. You know, so for example, my 9-year-old plays baseball, and we were talking about some aspect of leadership, and he said, "Well, a coach needs to know a lot about what they're leading." He said, for example, my baseball coach needs to know a lot about baseball. And that's not really that profound, but it's an interesting point that if we're leading something, we need to have some depth of knowledge in that area and some understanding. Now, sometimes we can lead when we don't have a lot of knowledge and experience, but we know what questions to ask and where the issues are related to it because we've been through so many of these different situations. But anyway, I thought it was interesting, like you said, his uncluttered view and his simplicity is refreshing for me, and they're also very succinct. They'll state their point of view in a sentence. They don't some the more experienced people get, sometimes they go on and on and on, like probably I did today a little bit. But their clarity and simplicity and uncluttered view is refreshing. So I've enjoyed the exchanges we've had so far.
How do you see the progression in your choice of grandchildren from from age 9 to 17? How how fast do they gain this complexity and maybe the skill of uh, translating their ideas to you?
Mm. That's a good question. My 17-year-old is a very bright young boy, and he's very precise. If I'll ask him a question, he'll analyze the question, and before he answers it, he wants to be very clear on the question. Now, my 9-year-old and 12-year-old would not do that. They'd just, answer the question and be done with it. So he's learned to be very analytical, I guess, in making sure he understands the question before he replies. Now, that's a pretty sophisticated thing for anybody. A lot of times we assume we understand the question. My 17-year-old also has had certainly more experiences with they all play sports, and they're on some of them play musical instruments, and they're on student government, and they're very active in their high schools and in their community. So my 17-year-old's had a broader range of experiences than the 9-year-old. So his answers, when he gets into an answer, is probably more, I don't know, the breadth or the points he makes are more relevant to multiple situations or examples that he could describe.
Hmm. So he makes some of the analysis for you
Yeah.
because the younger they are, the closer to skin their answers are, because they think of the immediate closest experience that they had
Hmm.
with the thing that you are asking about.
Hmm.
And 17-year-old already compiles multiple experiences to
Yep.
provide you an aggregated
Yep.
result.
Yep.
That's fun.
Yep. And my 17-year-old is like I say, he's a very bright boy. He's straight A student and just, very clear thinker and good insights. And, he's really an exception, I think, for a lot of other kids I run into and chat with. But anyway, I'm probably a little bit biased as a grandparent, but he's really unique, you know.
What does the next year hold for you as a family man and for you as a professional? What are your two plans for
Hmm.
development?
Yeah. Well, I am semi-retired. I don't like the word retired because that sounds like you've checked out and you're done. I write articles in books as we described. I publish on LinkedIn just about every day something. I'm speaking at a couple of conferences, one in October and one in February next year. One's in Mexico and one is in Florida. And I have a couple other opportunities to speak at conferences in 2025. With my family, as I mentioned, my grandkids are all into sports. So my wife and I love to watch them, and as often as we can, we'll get to see a game, hockey, soccer, baseball, etc. So probably doing a bit more of that if we can. I play a lot of tennis, so hopefully I'm going to keep doing that. And family gatherings periodically throughout the year happen, so that's all fun and good stuff. So that's kind of what I'm up to.
I'm happy to hear that you are not done making the impact in the professional realm,
Hmm.
and you are enjoying the things that you do with your family.
Yeah.
That brings me joy.
Hmm.
uh, all right, I will leave the link to your LinkedIn profile in the video so the people can find you and follow you to have more stuff from you.
No, that would be great. I would just mention if anyone is interested in one of my books, they're available on Amazon. They're very inexpensive. They also are very short and to the point. Most of them are 60 or less pages. You can read it in an hour. Um, and I think they offer some good advice that will help really anyone be a more effective leader, including parents, teachers, coaches, managers, team leaders, etc.
That sounds like a liquid gold because I would rather buy a 60-page book than the ones I have
Yeah,
that have 350 pages.
right,
And I need to hold through them to find the two ideas that would be
right,
interesting to me.
right.
Yeah,
I feel the same way. Yeah. And
liquid
they're
gold.
very
Thank you.
inexpensive. They're like 4.99 or less, so you're not going to go
Hmm,
broke buying one of my books. So that's another positive aspect.
definitely. Alrighty. Thank you for this conversation. I think you have shared the value with us. And yeah,
All right. Well, thank you, Alex, for having me on. I appreciate it. You asked some great questions, and I hope your audience will enjoy it. So thank you.
thank you, Paul.